In the last episode, we first did the vertical scaling, and after a certain point, we moved on to the horizontal scaling. We saw some advantages with the horizontal scaling, and today we are going to discuss more. Now, since these are normal services, so you can see that all the functionality that we have talked about, like search, book, card, billing, everything is sitting in the same project itself, right? And we are talking about microservices, right? Or distributed system. It's not distributed, it's a single service that's taking care of everything, right? And we also mentioned that we wanted to integrate with third party, so third party e-commerce website wherein I'll be able to publish some of my things to the e-commerce website and sell it through them. So let's go ahead and let's try to understand how we can do that. So what all we need over here to make our service available to the outside world and to be available to the outside world, right? Now what they need to do is to approach me with the book details, and I will go ahead and add them as an admin, or I can create their account in my admin portal wherein they come and they do the things, right? It's not always convenient that somebody has to manually do it and get things done, right? We don't want manual things to happen. Instead, what could be a better approach if we want to publish the books of other websites? So let's say I have mybooks.com, another website, very similar website, let's say, and they have their service. I don't care what they have, and they also publish their books in and store them in the database. They have their services and all. Let's say they have 200k books, and I want these books to be sold through my site, and I should be able to get the benefits. So he needs to contact me manually, or he needs to log into my web page and then do things, right? So this is a human thing, right? We don't want that. We wanted to expose some APIs, and this service, they have written some service over here, maybe in Java or whatever language it is. This should call this API, and this API should publish it in my database. That's what my target is, right? And if they want to display some of the books, so they can also display my books in their website. So that's what we are looking for. So what do we need in order to do something like that? So here we have discussed that we have 4 modules, right? Search, book, cart, and billing. So let's start with search. So I want the outside world should be able to call my service and get some response. I already have a module called search, and our domain or the site is books.com. So I wanted to create an endpoint which can be called by others, something like this. So any third party or external guy can call me this API and pass me the keyword that they want to search with. Let's talk about a basic search for the moment. So I have books.com, I have created API, and under API I have search. So this is going to be my URL, and the request parameter is this. So you can put anything over here, let's say DS or algo or any text that you want. So whatever is matching, I am going to respond it back with a, let's say, a JSON array for sake of simplicity, and each of this JSON array element is of type book. So maybe I have a book ID 1285 and some name, whatever details is there, let's say DS by Mr. X. And there could be many other fields, right? There could have, it could have a price, it could have tags, what are the tags that are matching, and I return multiple books like this as an array, right? So one big difference to note over here is in HTML, this is consumed by humans, right? We see the HTML, we type things, we search things, right? We go to Google, we type things, and this API or the REST APIs, whatever you call, it is consumed by your code. So some JavaScript is going to make this call. Let's say JavaScript, it could be anything actually. He gets a response, right? And he shows the response in the UI, or if he wants to process further, store with him, or do other things, he can do it very easily. So each of the book object could look something like this. So it can have a book ID, name, price, quantity, image, and there are multiple images. So you can specify them the way you want, right? Whatever you wanted to give them back, and they can display it accordingly, process them accordingly, or whatever they want. Now you have to keep in mind one thing, everything happens over HTTP, right? And HTTP have lot of methods. So let's look at them. So here is Postman, and using Postman you can make HTTP request, right? So here you can see that there are methods. So there are so many type of method like get, post, put, patch, delete, copy, head, options, link, unlink, purge, lock, unlock. But for now we are going to talk about get, post, put and delete only. We'll talk about rest of them down the line in the series, but for now we just talk about these four methods. So these are the four methods, right? We are going to talk about. So when you want to make a request like search, wherein you are going to get some data and you are going to show this data, you are not going to manipulate any data in the database. When you are making a search call, you are just going, hitting, querying my DB, getting the results back. And so we are going to use a get method for this. So this is tied to your view. So this API that we have created over here, so let me remove this JS. This API is a get API, right? Now we'll see the other things soon. So let's talk about the book. So for book, what we have a again we have the same endpoint, books.com/API. So this is the book module, so it will be with book, right? So this method over here will have a get, because you wanted to get a particular book also, right? So this API will look like books.com followed by book, and you need to give a ID, right? So this will be your ID. So whatever ID you give, so if I give 1285, so it will return me this object only, right? Similarly, I want to create books also. So for that, I will use a post, but the API will be the same as this one. We don't need to give a ID, right? Because the ID will be generated. So the post is for creating. Similarly, the same API will be there with put, and put will be used for update. And similarly, we have the same API as the books one. This one is get. We have get and delete, because when you want to delete, you have to specify the book ID, right? So when you want to delete, you have to specify the book ID, right? That's what we are providing over here. So just keep in mind these methods over here is making some modification, or it is changing the state of my database. So once this operation is performed, one of this operation is performed with success, my database has something updated, deleted or created, right? It's no more the same. But for view, it is only a read-only kind of thing. And when you are done, you should send a response back. Just to give you a little more brief over here, what actually happened is you send a request. Request have the first thing, which is your request path, where you are sending it like this. Then you have your request method. For now, let's take only 4. So it could be either of one, get, post, put or delete. Thirdly, for post and put, you need a request body. What does the body contain? So when you're creating a book, you should give like your book name or name, whatever it is, some name, then your price, how many copies you have, if you're uploading any images, and everything will provide as the body, right? Apart from this, we also have something called as headers. We are going to talk about it later, not at this point, but somewhere down the line in this video itself. So when this request comes, you process the request and you send a response back, right? So response, the first important thing is it should have a status code. We'll talk about it soon. Can have a response body. In this case, we have just seen, right? For search, we had a response body. So this is my response, right? When you call this keyword with this text, we are going to send you this response back. So it will be the part of the response body. Third thing, it might have some response headers also. So just remove the response because anyways we have written on top, and it can have headers also. Right? There could be many other things, but we are going to deal with only these few things for now, right? So we have certain APIs. So let's list down those APIs. Okay, so one mistake is that put will not be here, sorry, because put will also need a ID which book is going to be updated, right? So it will look like this. So for search, we have only one over here, this one. And for book, we have four as of now. So one is for getting a book by ID, one is for deleting a book, one is for updating a book, one is for creating a book, right? Similarly, billing and cart will also have some APIs. So API slash cart, and you can have add functionality. You are adding a book, so you can just pass a book ID equals to some book ID, and you're adding to the cart, so it should be a post operation. And similarly, you have your billing. So for billing also, you are doing a post and API slash bill. And we know we are going to get everything from the cart. So we can just call it API slash bill. We can have extra parameter depending on whenever it's required, right? So these are a few of the APIs that we have in our system currently. A total of 7 APIs that we have. We can give these APIs to mybooks.com, the other website, and we can tell them that you don't have to come log into my site. What you can do is you can directly call these APIs and you can create your books directly, manage your books, delete your books when there is the books are sold out and everything, right? So this is how we can do. And let's say mybooks.com has published some books in books.com. That's my site, right? And I want to sell it through another third party, so I can use their site. So let's say we have a site called worldbooks.com, right? So I can post in their website as well. So you can see that how easy it becomes to collaborate things, right? I don't need a manual intervention. So whenever this API post is called, I store it for myself and I also pass it on to worldbooks.com. He might also pass it to somebody else based on the contract, right? Between each of the sites. So mybooks.com has a contract with me. I have a contract with WorldBooks. WorldBooks has contract with somebody else. The chain can go on. So that's the beauty of this API. We don't need any human intervention. We can directly get things done. So before we go further, here are a few things that we have left. So one is a status code. So this status code tells us what has happened with the request. If the request is 2xx, means starting with 2 followed by other 2 digits, it generally means success. If it's 3xx, it's mostly redirections. If it is 4xx, it generally means client error. And if it is 5xx, it means server error, that I did something wrong. My server has done something wrong. So 2xx means that it's a successful response. So let's take a look at all these status codes that's available on the web. So here we are. It's a list of all the status codes. 1xx is also there. It's informational response. 2xx successful. 3xx redirection. 4xx client error. 5xx server error. So let's look at some numbers. So 200 is the most common. 200 is said okay. So when you're doing a post operation or a put operation, it's good to return 201. All these APIs, let's put the response code. So it's good to return a 200 over here. It's good to return a 200 over here. For delete, it's not a create, so we can say it's a 200. For put and post, we can say it's 201, which means it's created or updated. So for billing, you can say a 200, and for post also you can say a 200. This is the happy path response. So let's take a look at the response code. So you can see created, accepted. We are going to talk about accepted in some other video. No content, reset content, and all that. For 3xx, you have multiple choices, moved permanently, not modified, use proxy, use switch. There are so many response codes. So 400 could be a bad request. We are going to see that soon. 401 is unauthorized. 402 payment required. 403 is forbidden. 404 is not found, quite a common one. So let's go back here. So if you want to delete a book or get a book, you might get a 400. And for delete, forget, for delete, for put, you might get a 404 as well. Because whatever you are looking for, that might not exist, right? So there is a chance that you might get a 404. So we are listing down all the error codes. So for search, we don't need to return a 404. We can just return an empty array. Then we have method not allowed, right? So for example, somebody sends a request with post and API search. In that case, we can leverage this return, right? This method not allowed, because this method we are not supporting. Post we are not supporting for search, right? So we can return a 405 in this case. So there are so many of them. You can take a look at all of them. You might not need all of them in day-to-day life. Then comes the 5xx server error. So 500 internal server error, my processing has failed. There is no problem with the client. This is something very severe. If it's happening continuously, you need to go ahead and check. 502 bad gateway, 503 service not available, gateway timeout, HTTP version not supported. There are so many of them. There are some unofficial code also used, you can see over here, but these are the one that's pretty much the standard. Now let's understand some scenarios over here and let's update our diagram. So what we have done is we have given access to mybooks.com. So what it can do is it can call my endpoints, right? MyBooks now can call the service directly without seeing the web page. We can directly call the service. So with that, we have a problem now in hand, right? There are sites that adding books, right? What will happen if a spammer comes into life? He comes to know about it, right? He can also make use of my API endpoints and create 1 million fake books. Also goes to the DNS, and from DNS, he sends some malicious request to the application and it adds a lot of record. We don't want that to happen, right? So let's get rid of this guy. We don't want this guy. We have to prevent this guy. We are going to talk about a thing at a very high level over here. So if you notice over here, we have mentioned some headers. So these headers, this request headers, are generally used for your authentication and authorization. So what happens is I am books.com and I sign a contract with mybooks.com because he needs to pay me, right? So there is some conversation between him and myself, right? So we agreed upon certain percentage of commission and everything, right? That's offline. And then I gave him a API key, a client code, and a client secret. We are going to talk about it later in details, much more details. So I give him these three things. I tell him that you take all these things and you put this on your header. That is how I am going to know that you are the right. He is going to send this header with every request, not the API key. So API key is a part of your query parameters. So query parameters are those which is after your question mark keyword, you have a key and a value. Here's a random unique API key which is pretty long. I'm going to show you some, and you have a client code. So this is, I will say that, okay, this is your client code. So you are mybooks.com/books.com, something like this, with some numbers and things like that. And here's a long client secret, 12AXP1597, whatever it is, right? So I give him this and he needs to put this on his header. So whenever a request comes from him using this, I know that, okay, this guy is from mybooks.com. And if I sell this book that comes from this client code, which is specified over here, then I am going to get certain commission, and at the end of the month I can go back to him. And what I can do is I can stop the spammers because they doesn't have a client code, right? And they don't have a client secret, neither they have a API key, right? It's a very high level, and we are going to dig deep later in some other videos about the authentication and authorization. So this is a very big part in this series. So maybe I need 3 or 4 episodes to cover all of them, right? We have to understand about OAuth 2. So what happens with this is my application is now eligible to take call from a third party, list the book, and I can use the book. Similarly, if I want to sell in some of the book, right? So let's say I wanted to put it in worldbooks.com as we have talked. Similarly, he will also give me a client code and everything similar, right? And I will make a call. I will have a client code, client secret, using which I will publish in my world books or world books, whatever it is. I can directly make calls using this. So this is how it works. So one thing to notice over here that I have segregated my front end from the back end, right? So what I can do is I can create a service which contains my books module, my search module, my cart module, and my billing module. My HTML is not a part of this anymore. So I will deploy it simply the HTML pages in a separate server wherein I will have all those 5 pages that we have talked about. And we also have mybooks.com, right? So both of them has their own pages and both of them is calling my service. So my service, my pages over here is also having a client code. Let's say own or sell, something like this. And he has a client code, my books. I can distinguish who is sending me the request. I treat them in the same way. So tomorrow I have abcbooks.com. If they wanted to sell through us, I give him a client code, client secret, and he can make use of ABC Books or whatever I give him, right? It should be unique, right? I should be able to distinguish between all the clients over here. So I can onboard clients very easily. And if you take any sites, they uses the same mechanism in order to identify you. So let's say that I wanted to use some of the Google APIs, right? And my site books.com want to use some Google APIs. Developer Google Console, if we go over here. So here is developer Google Console. So this is the dashboard from where you create your API key or client ID, client secret. There are 2 mechanisms, right? We talked about. So let's go ahead and create for new project called books.com. Books.com. So I wanted to call the Google API. So what I can do is I can go to credential and I create a different kind of credential, right? So currently I have no credential created. So you can go ahead, create a credential. So API key is 1. So you'll get a key using which you can make the calls. It says your API key is created. Use this key in your application by passing it key equals to API key, this key over here, though I'm having it masked because if you come to know about this key, you can use this key and it will be built on my name, right? So it says that restrict your key to prevent unauthorized use in production. So you should restrict your key, keep it safe, do not share with others. Now if our spammer friend gets this key, he can create books, millions of books on behalf of me, and I have to pay the price. And the second way is using the OAuth that we haven't discussed yet. So OAuth is another mechanism I mentioned, and API key is another mechanism. So for OAuth, you'll have a client ID and a client secret. Client ID is used to identify a single app to Google's OAuth server. It's external, and let's go ahead and create it. So it will ask me for all the things, but we don't have a domain. Anyways, once you do this, what will happen is you will get your client ID and client secret using which you can authorize and authenticate yourself. So there are 2 mechanisms, right? We have seen the API key way. So let me go ahead and delete the API key. I don't want it. So this is how we build the connection with the other website, or we connect ourselves to the other website. So here are two things to understand over here, just to mention. So we are going to talk about all these things in much more details, and we are going to check all those things hands-on. We are going to build our things. We are going to call the services. We are going to create an app. We will do it slowly, not at this point. At this point, my lookout is to build a good basic foundation about all this terminology and get comfortable before we jump into the code. Let's understand the difference between authentication and authorization, right? Authentication is the process of identifying someone's identity by assuring that the person is the same person that he is claiming to be. Let's take some examples. So books.com, this is us, right? And we are doing integration with, say, A, B, and C, right? All of them are calling, but they have a different client ID. So he is passing me a client ID. He is also passing me a client ID. He is also passing me a client ID, right? Or let's say they are all passing me an API key, whatever it is. The first thing is to understand that, okay, when I get a request, I should be able to make out this is the guy A or this is the guy C, right? So we have to make sure that it is the same person who he's claiming to be. So the server and client both should know about it. The server uses authentication when someone wants to access the information, right? So when I am giving you a response back, I should know whom I am giving this response to, right? Just think of a scenario. A has created a book, right? So I have a database over here. A has created a book. So this is my table and I have an ID and a name. So book number 32 is name ABC and it is created by A. Right? Book number 64 is XYZ and it is created by C. So if A wants to delete or update 64, should I allow him? Of course not, because this is created by C. I can only allow him to change for 32, not for 64. Right? So this part is called authorization. Okay, I know that you are A, that is your authentication, but are you authorized to change or manipulate whatever you are trying to manipulate? So these are two different concepts altogether, right? So authentication used to authenticate someone's identity, whereas authorization is a way to provide permission to someone to access a particular resource, right? Let's say I have a spammer, he sends me a CLI or API key of PQR, which is an invalid one. So I say that your authentication has failed. But if A tries to update 64, it's a authorization error. But if the spammer try to access with a wrong identity, this is a authentication error. Just a very simple example, you go to a hotel, you give your credit card and your ID card, and what you get is a key to room number 64. Now you have the rooms over here, right? You have 64, you have 63, you have 62. Now if you take this key over here, should this door open? Of course no, right? You are only allowed to open this door and not any other doors, right? So this is something same, right? So this key acts as your authorization mechanism, right? So I hope you got the difference between authentication and authorization. We are going to talk about it more in details when we talk about OAuth, we talk about resource server and everything in details in some later video. But for now in this video, I hope you got some of the key concept that we are talking, that is REST. So everything that we are discussing, even the horizontal scaling and vertical scaling, we are going to try it out hands-on. I have heard the comments you guys have mentioned. We will definitely do hands-on. But at this time, if I create some Docker containers and put some Spring Boot images inside it and all, it will be too much. So I wanted to build it up slowly. For this video, I hope you got some understanding of the REST, how the request and response works. You got some idea about authorization and authentication. So with this, we'll end this video over here. And in the coming episode, we are going to talk about load balancer. So how we are going to balance out this load and what are the different ways a load balancer can help us over here. So still we are not into a complete microservices architecture, but we are at a very high level, but we are going to dig deep in the days to come. Still we have all the services sitting together. We are going to split them up. We are going to go slowly and we are going to get things done in the episodes to come. So do let me know what you think about this episode. Do comment. That's the only source of encouragement I have from you guys. It's always good to hear you guys. So please let me know what you think about this video. Do let me know if I can make it any better. I am always reading your comment and try to improve upon the videos. So do let me know. Thanks once again for making the video so much popular, and definitely reach out to me. I read all the comments that you guys has given over here, and thanks once again for mentioning out. Thanks Aditi, Mahendra, Shiva, Nishant, John, Shivam. So I will definitely make videos Shivam on Elasticache and Redis. As mentioned by Mahendra, I am going to do some implementation as well. So I have given a comment that definitely I am going to make the implementation sooner, very soon, once we move into the Docker and containerization part. Thanks, Shiva. I'll also take your comments. We'll do that. I'll try to explain more in details. So do let me know if you have any doubts, question. Thank you guys once again. Do let me know your comments. I'll read out the comments first from the next episode onwards. Let's make it more interactive and see you soon, guys. Bye bye and take care.